Howdy guys, my name is Abby. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. I'm sure you can tell by the title, but it is the finale of my debt payoff series. So if you want to know how I got there, just keep watching. This has been a wild journey and I am so happy to be making this video. I'm going to start kind of at the beginning and briefly recap how I got to this point, like where basically before I started wanting to pay off the debt, and then I'll talk about how I did it and where I'm at now. Just a side note, this isn't my usual content. I normally make vegan and cruelty-free makeup, lifestyle kind of stuff, so if you happen to be into that also, then maybe stick around. In August 2018, I started out with about $12,000 in debt. That was when this whole debt payoff journey started. I had two credit cards. I had one with $2,700, the second one with $5,400, and then my student loan, which had $4,000 left, approximately. And that was a total of about $12,100 and some change. So in August 2018, around that time, I had just broken up with my ex-boyfriend. We had moved together to Maryland, which was for my job, so I took a higher paying position at another location of the bank where I worked. I was making pretty decent money at this job for my age, I suppose. I mean, I could have been making more, yeah, but I was making $17 an hour approximately. We got quite a bit of overtime, especially around the holidays, because my department was in conjunction with a big retail store that does a lot of sales on Black Friday and Christmas gifts and all that. So we were pretty busy around that time. So there were weeks that I probably could have worked like 80, 90 hours and gotten all that overtime, plus they gave us like incentives. So I used a lot of that overtime to pay off my debt. But it wasn't enough, like up until the 2018, because I quit that job in 2018. So before that, I would try to use that money, or I would be like, okay, I'm going to work X number of hours this week, and I'm going to put all that extra money into paying off my debt, but I never did it. I would spend it all. But while we were in Maryland, my ex-boyfriend, he wasn't my ex then, obviously, but he didn't hold a job pretty much the entire time that we were dating, which is a whole nother story, anyways. So where we were living, the cost of living was pretty high. Like I could barely afford to live there. So that's why I racked up a little bit of debt. Because at that time when we moved in there, I only had the first credit card and it had about a $3,000 limit. So remember how I said it had $2,700 on it? You don't want to do that. Do not rack up your cards that high. So I didn't have much on that before we moved, but I used it to pay expenses like paying off things with my old apartment, which I was able to get out of that lease before I moved to Maryland, which was really nice. But when we moved to Maryland, there were bills that I didn't expect. So I didn't know that we had to pay for parking. So we both had a car and we had to pay, it was like $100 a month just to park our cars in the parking garage because there wasn't free street parking. It was a really, really busy street and you could only park for like 15 minutes. And there were no parking lots or anything. Like it just didn't exist in that area. So, I mean, if I wanted to park on the street, I would have had to park several blocks away. And that was not a safe neighborhood. We regularly heard gunshots. Not being dramatic at all. That was literally probably 2 or 3 nights a week we would hear gunshots. It wasn't in our like immediate area. Like we were above a bunch of businesses. So it wasn't really that bad. So the pizzeria across the street did get broken into one night, but that was another problem living there because literally across the street from my apartment was this coffee shop that had vegan food and obviously vegan drinks, and there was this restaurant across from right next to that had a lot of vegan food options. So I would regularly go there, stop like on the way to work and get stuff, which was probably not good. I should have eaten at home. Anyways, I said this was going to be brief, so get right back to it. So I started racking up some debt because I didn't want to risk overdrawing my bank account. So I would put some things on my credit card and then I'd be like, oh, I'll just pay them off later. Well, that just kept escalating. Finally, I was like, you know what? We can't afford to live here anymore. So let's just move back home. I had a room at my parents' house, which is where I am now. And he moved back in with his family. And then shortly after that, we broke up. So but when I moved back here, they wouldn't let me take my job back here, which, I mean, makes sense to me. But they didn't have any positions open that I wanted to take, so I was like, you know what, I'll just take a different route. So I worked on YouTube actually for a little bit and didn't make any money, obviously. So I was like, well, I'll just take a part-time job, and then eventually I worked on to full-time at my part-time job at a craft store that is known for having a pretty high pay for their full-time employees. I'll just say that. You can probably guess which one it is. So right prior to August 2018, I was dead set that my life goal was to renovate a van or a little RV and travel the country by myself. So I would have had to pay off all my debt before I left on this big grand adventure, because I didn't want to worry about making that much money while I was on the road. Like, I wanted to make a little bit, like I was going to do vlogs and stuff, maybe try to, you know, promote products related to RVing or whatever, and, you know, make money that way, or find some kind of online job that I could do, like from coffee shops or with a hotspot on my phone. So that's why I wanted to start paying off this debt, because I was like, well, I'll have to pay all this off so I don't have these payments every month and it's just dragging me down. And then that way I can use that income that I'm not spending on paying off the debt and put that into saving for the actual van. That way I won't have that debt either. I can just pay cash for the van and pay cash to renovate it. Which, thinking back now, I'm really, really glad that I did not go that route, because I follow a lot of nomads, people who are like hashtag van lifers or whatever, and they are having a really hard time right now because of the situation, and they are getting stuck places. Like, they can't really go, some states won't let you travel through, and then you have to like quarantine if you go to a different state and they're in a van, so it's really difficult. There are people who do it, but I think it would be a lot more stressful. So that was my goal by the end of, I think I wanted to do it by the end of last year. I probably could have done it, honestly, if I had focused a little bit more. I did fall off the track a few times. And in 2019, I also did this thing called a no-buy year. So it's pretty popular in the makeup community, where you don't buy anything new, even like clothes or anything, for an entire year, and then see how much money you can save. And I kind of sort of did that, but it was not good. Like, I got a few pretty large tattoo pieces that year, so that pretty much negated the whole thing. So I basically spent the same amount of money. While I was working at that job, I did have a few opportunities to help them set up some new stores. So I did 3 of those. There was one in Illinois, and then there was one in Northern Ohio, and then there was another one a little bit farther south, kind of closer to Cincinnati, which I live in the greater Cincinnati area on the Kentucky side, so wasn't that far away. But they pay for travel, and we got probably 20-30 hours of overtime every week. So that was a lot of extra money. Like, I probably could have made maybe $6,000 or $7,000 on top of my regular income from doing one of those store things. So those really helped me to pay off my debt a little bit faster, because what I would do was, if my paycheck, say normally I made like $800 or $900 a paycheck, then I would take like the extra. So if I made like $1,500, then I would take the extra $600 and put that straight into debt payoff. Toward the end of 2019, a little over a year ago, I met my now fiance, and that has totally turned everything upside down, because now we are getting ready to move out of the country, which is even cooler, because it's like I get to travel, not as much as like if I was going on a van, like, you know, every day, but basically going to the other side of the world and being closer to other things that we can travel to. It's a lot cooler than my idea, so that's amazing. But anyways, that's not why. Like, that kind of happened after we had gotten together. Like, he didn't always plan on his career path, so that just kind of was how it ended up. So I was like, well, I gotta hurry up and pay this debt off, because I don't want to bring that with me. Because right now, as of this past March, I do work for myself full-time. So I own my own business called Cruelty-Free Stitchery, which may or may not exist anymore by the time you're watching this, if you're watching this like way after I post it, because I can't bring it with me where we're going. So that's kind of sad, but I think that it'll give me opportunities to do other things. One of my saving graces with that business is that it was a business where I make things like with the sewing machine and fabric, and just so happened that as soon as I went full-time on that was when the pandemic hit and everybody needed face masks. And I sold, like at this point right now, I'm filming this in the middle of November, and I'm coming up on 1,000 masks, like at least 900, if not more. I stopped counting at about 800, but I've sold quite a few of those, and that really helped, even though it was kind of a bummer and I really resented making them for a long time. But that's another story for another day. I've already ranted about that about 15 times. But I quit my full-time job before I had all my debt paid off, and I just felt like at ease with it. Like I wasn't really scared or uncertain. Like I knew that I could make it work. So around that time I had just a little bit left on my one credit card. So going way back, I was almost done with my second credit card, the one that had $5,400 on it. I had to open up a third credit card because that one was about to start accruing interest, like the 0% period was almost over. And I did the math. I would have had to pay several $100 of back interest. So I went ahead and opened up a third credit card. That way I could get 0% on that and did a balance transfer. I wouldn't recommend that in all situations, but that's what I thought was best for me at the time, and it worked out great. I didn't pay a dime in interest for anything. And then what also kicked me into gear was the CARES Act. So if you're not from the US, basically the part of the pandemic response was to bring student loans to 0% interest. So which if you're not from the US, student loans are probably a foreign concept anyways, because most countries, college is basically free. But anyways, normally my interest on that, I honestly don't remember. I think it's like 10 to 13% approximately. And most of my payments were just going to interest. It wasn't paying on the principal. But when they announced that originally it was going to be through the end of September that everybody's student loan would be in forbearance, you didn't have to make a payment, and it would have 0% interest, which was amazing. So I was like, well, I need to pay this off quick before that runs out, because then I'll end up paying a lot less in interest over time. But eventually they extended it to the end of 2020. So as of August, about 3 months ago, I had $250 left to pay on my last credit card, and then about $1,200 on my student loan. So looking back on my business, I was putting a lot of money back into like reinvesting into the business and creating, like I would make new products like months and months in advance. Like I would plan for new things before the next thing was about to come out, just because I knew that I needed to keep that momentum, and the way to grow on Etsy is to have more things, like more items is more chance that somebody will see your shop. So I was reinvesting and making new prints of things. So I didn't take as much of a cut as I could have, but I thought it was the best thing to do at the time, was to reinvest as much as I could and only take what I needed. So maybe that would have helped my debt progress if I would have not reinvested so much into it, but also that did contribute to my growth. So maybe I wouldn't have been able to make as much progress if I hadn't done that. So with that business and help with my stimulus check and all that stuff, I was able to completely pay off all of my debt in about 2 years. 6 months of that has been while I was self-employed. And it did get tricky and scary for a while, because sales for the past, however long it's been, 6 months, 7 months, sales are like up and down, like consistently. Like 1 month I'll make $500, next month I'll make like $2,000 or $3,000, next month I'll make a couple $100. It's just wild. But I am grateful for being able to run the business from home, because I was able to stay home, not contribute to the virus or, spreading it or anything, and keeping myself safe as well. I did make enough to pay my bills and pay off my debt, and also not have to cut into my emergency savings. Now I'm putting everything that I make into my savings. That way I can buy this really expensive plane ticket to this place. Like, I'm hoping that the method that I used to pay off my debt was kind of a modified debt snowball method. So basically that's where you start with the lowest balance first, and then take what you were paying on that and put it towards the next one, and then pay that off, then put all that money towards the next one. and then the amount that you can pay each month just keeps growing on the next one, if that makes sense. There's a lot more in-depth explanations of that on YouTube. I won't get into it too much, but I also took into consideration the interest rate on some of the things that I was paying on. And I'll say my number one tip to paying down your debt is to keep track. So you want to track what you're spending unnecessarily and also what you are putting into your debt payoff. And then the most important thing as well is to have an emergency fund before you even start trying to pay off your debt, because you're just going to end up, if something comes up, you're just going to end up in debt again trying to pay for that. So if you have like at least $1,000 or so in emergency, the way if you need a new tire or an unexpected doctor's visit or something, then you can have that buffer so you don't have to reach back to your credit card again. So that was it for this video. Let me know if you guys have any questions or any other videos that you want me to make on this topic or anything else about budgeting or credit. Click up here to watch my most recent video, or click up here to watch my last money video. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss seeing my face in your subscription box every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And the links to my social media and my blog will be in the description box below, and I will see you guys in the comments. Bye.